Hey, welcome to Touchbase Tuesday. It's good to see you, and we want to be communicating with you as much as we can. Now, obviously, there's a lot of things changing right now, both nationally and statewide and locally, as to what the situation is with this whole corona chaos, as I call it. So we want to catch you up and kind of give you some direction and some input. As we've talked about before, we are using kind of a framework to work with on how to approach this situation. So on the top of that framework, we want to be really prudently careful about how we go about this issue of reopening in all of its decisions and all of its dynamics. And so we want to be prudently careful. That seems a responsible thing to do. We don't want to be cavalier. We're not just kind of so anxious that we can't stand it. We want to be prudently careful. But on the other side of that framework, down at the bottom, we understand that we can't guarantee that no one would ever get anything, a germ here at Quest. We can't guarantee that. It's not realistic. That's not real life. It happens. And so we can't guarantee being 100% germ-free. But let me go back to the top again and say, but we can be prudently careful. We can take this responsibility seriously, and that's what we want to do. Now, on another side of that framework, there are national, state, and local orders and guidelines that we want to take seriously and we want to honor. Now, is every person who's making decisions doing it for all the right reasons? Well, probably not. There are probably political issues going on. But tell you the truth, it's hard for us to judge that and know that for sure. And so it seems like taking those orders and guidelines that we're going to trust that leaders, on the most part, are doing the best they know how. And it's a tough position, isn't it? It would be hard to be the president. It'd be hard to be the governor. It'd be hard to be the county executive right now. It'd be hard to be the mayor of St. Louis. These are difficult decisions, and you know that it's not going to please everybody. So you make the best decision you can. And then on the other side of that framework are clear protocols that we want to take as a church that will protect the safety of our congregation and our community. And so we are going to take those seriously and think those through. Now, let me go back to the national, state, and county. Just recently, we have a little more direction from the county, obviously. On Monday, May 18th, it is the reopening of our county with some limitations and some controls and some directions. But the ones that affect us as a church primarily are this, is that we can open up with a 25% of the occupancy limits by the fire department has established. And what that means for Quest is that we would be limited in our main auditorium to 75 people. And so we have to then think through, is that a good idea? Is that worth it? What do we do with that? But it'd be 75 as a limit in the auditorium. And maybe we could use the lower level too, but we'll see what happens. Secondly, they are encouraging social distancing still of 6 feet. Now, you guys, let's remind ourselves, 6 feet is not a magical number. 5'11" doesn't mean you're in danger, and 6'1" doesn't mean you're totally safe. That's a general distancing that seems to be helpful. And then thirdly, that there are face masks are being strongly encouraged, especially if the social distancing of 6 feet is not possible. But that the face masks seem to be helpful, especially to protect and respect the person apart from us who's on the other side, that I might wear a face mask to respect them. And so those are some of the directions that the city and the county are giving us. Now, when we look at our protocols, this week we're going to have a few really important meetings of the staff and the elders and some medical experts that we're going to ask to give us their opinion on how we might handle some of the protocols for Quest. Also, 100 of you have taken our survey on how comfortable you are coming back in to the building, when, where, how, and what, all that kind of stuff. And really, frankly, you've given us some great input, and it's really been helpful. In fact, I think it's right along the lines of what we've been thinking. We'll give you some of those details later. But we want you to know that we will be governed by the law as we do this. And what I mean by the law, we are all called to a higher law. We're called to a law of love. And what that means, I think, is that both congregationally and individually, we will gladly accept our responsibility to diligently look out for the safety and welfare, not only of ourselves, but for those who are our neighbors and for our fellow citizens and those among whom we live and function. That is even a higher call, a higher love, a higher law, if you will, is to love each other and to love people around us in a really powerful way. So I want you to know that this week we'll be talking about those things and hopefully have some guidelines for you soon in the next week or so about how we're going to handle this whole reopening thing. But I want you to remind you too, as we've been saying for the last several weeks, is that crisis it always creates courage in people. And we've seen that from so many people, and it needs to be a part of what it does in us is to create courage and to love deeply those people around us. But it also creates questions. That's why we're doing this series called What and Why? Answers grounded in faith and hope. And we want to be answering some of the questions about what gives us hope in the middle of this all. But it also, crisis creates conflict. I think we see that increasingly in our nation, in our communities, in our states, and probably as we approach this issue of reopening, I'm finding it to create more conflict between people than even the shutting down process did. To reopen, people are all over the map. And sometimes they begin to feel it really deeply, and sometimes in unhealthy ways. And so there's a lot of conflict happening. And I want to encourage us as a church and us as individuals to say, you know what, we're not going to let this tear us apart. We're not going to let this create disunity, because the unity of the body is so important. And so as we move along, probably things won't happen perfectly as you would prefer or as I would prefer. And so learning to flex, give grace, kind of move with each other, find a really common place where we're together and unified, and respecting each other in the process. So I just want us to be warned that let's not let the conflict damage what Christ wants to do among us and in us as the body of Christ that's expressed here at Quest. And for Christians, all around the region. And for Christians statewide and nationwide and around the world. And I want us to remember too that this crisis has hit not only locally, though it has hit very hard and it's been very difficult. And not only around the nation, but really around the world. I was just reading this morning about some of the things that are going on in India and an incredible starvation situation that's beginning to develop among the poorest of the poor there in India. Same things happening in the nation of Haiti and really around the world. And we see the cutbacks even locally, but internationally, where they have even less resources. Let's be praying for people, because this is beginning to have impact far beyond the virus itself, but the consequential issues that happen as a result of everything shutting down. So let's be praying for our world, and that the gospel, both in word and in deed, would go forward in a really powerful way. All right, so be looking for ways for you to invest yourself, both locally, but also globally, to make a difference for the gospel, for the love of Christ. I want you to encourage you to do that. All right, well, that's Touch Base Tuesday. We'll be touching base Thursday and hopefully have a little bit more for you then, okay? All right, love you guys. See ya.